Welcome back to the Shine Within podcast. I have here Sandy Sembler, hailed as the women's embodiment expert, created the Sacred She Method, a unification of her deep life experiences, teachings from esteemed mentors, and insights from a pivotal encounter with Tony Robbins. This method empowers women to release their past, embrace their unique voice and intuition, and shine brightly in their full authenticity. Deeply rooted in the belief that how we do anything is how we do everything, Sandy's approach transforms trauma into wisdom, promoting holistic emotional enlightenment. Alongside her husband, John, she co-designed the art of creative relationships, emphasizing healing within partnerships, which results in profound relational transformation. Through Sacred She, Sandy aspires to form a global community where women discover their truest selves with a goal to impact 12 million lives over the next 5 years through diverse educational avenues. Thank you so much, Sandy, for being here today.
Oh my gosh, hearing you read that back is like, oh, just feels so good. I love hearing your voice just like shower me with all that. So thank you for that. I receive it. And thank you for having me today.
Absolutely. Thank you. I was just like, yay, because you hit every topic that I had struggled with in my past.
Wow. Got it.
Every topic, like we can from going to the AA to seeking mentors to getting advice and going to places and working and hustling to also then relationships not working over and over sometimes, and then finally just having to learn about our energies and how we need to bring out more of that feminine energy and I guess harmonize with the masculine energy as well. And just that way our relationships can be much better, because a lot of relationships outside that we had were fine, but like for me at home, it was like hell, living hell. So I would love for you just to go ahead and share your story about your love story with the Sacred She method.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I love you share the love story. Isn't that great? A friend of mine of me, what she's referring to, I always ask people like, what is your love story with whatever it is? And most people think I'm talking about their partners, but no, it really is like what lights you up. Like you and I were just chatting before you hit record. Because it really is where the rubber meets the road, like the grout to the tile. So much more than like when we met our partner, because so much happened before we ever got into that relationship. And gosh knows we know after that as well, right? So I'm just going to touch on this because just based on the nature of your podcast and talking about sobriety and addiction, for me, I actually had my I was 19. I had been in and out of treatment centers for an eating disorder, and nobody really addressed why I was actually in that space. I mean, I had gone to OA and AA and NA, all the programs would have me go, but quite honestly, I just was still in the middle of numbing. And in the middle of the night, one night, I bought this was a long time ago, obviously, because we had cassette tapes, and I found one of those infomercials that Tony was on, Tony Robbins, and I bought that. And between that and Og Mandino, Greatest Miracle in the World, I was like convicted, and I realized that I was choosing to use, so to speak, because I was numbing. Now, fast forward, when I was, oh my gosh, 41. Okay, I'm 52 now. I was 40, so I was 40. I actually was in another failed relationship, super successful in business, had a son, and had a network of about 30,000 women that I was leading, and a company that I was with. And I was in, like I said, I had left an abusive relationship, with grace and style. He tried to take away my story, and I did not go for that. And even though I didn't walk around sharing the story, I could be in a room of women and I could feel the energy of anyone that had ever been in an abusive relationship. And what I mean is it not just physical, but the emotional that goes on. It's like blood in the water. I could smell it, and then I could relate. And I've been in that space for a very long time. It was raised in a direct sales family, and really got like brainwashed for the good, going to all these functions and such. So anyway, it was my best friend Rachel, who Sacred She is really named after. She I can't do her Australian accent, but she said to me, after this, I was in this relationship and went to her bawling and squalling again. She's like, Sandy, because understand, Dina, I having an addictive personality, can serve us. And the more that I've understood trauma through the years, especially in the work that I do now, I realize that hypervigilance, that go, go, go masculine mode, getting it done, is a trauma response to whatever, I guess the goosebumps from whatever happened in our past, right? And so we're overriding it. I mean, even an addiction in itself is a very masculine thing to do, to basically squash the feminine feelings that we're having. And again, I mean, it's just fascinating how the masculine and feminine essences are always at play. It's the yin and yang. It's nature. Right. It's what it's about. But yeah, so I had gone through counseling, and 3 times a week. So if I was going to do it, I was going to do it big time. And I was in counseling, and all the things. Did a 2-year hiatus, didn't date while I was going through that divorce. And my 10-year-old son at the time would just say, "Mommy, your picker's off. You just need to fix your picker and you'll be fine." And so I thought that was true. When I started dating again, I ended up in the same relationship with a different body, a same song, different record. And it was more covert abuse. And it was as if my body was dipped in Rain-X, my soul, you know what I mean? Like it would repel anybody, any man that was going to honor me, love me, respect me, adore me, experience me. And I was drawn like a moth to a flame to a man that I was going to have to sing for my supper, or, I had to prove my worth, right? And I can feel your energy as I read your body. I mean, I could feel you. I call them God bumps all over.
Oh yeah. Yeah, totally. Yeah. I've been getting them throughout this conversation right now too.
Yeah. Like high five, sister. I got you. I feel it. And it's interesting because, and Rachel said, Sandy, you have to look at, this is not who you are. She's like, it's not who you are. One of those late night, 4 o'clock in the morning conversations that we happen to record. And I'm glad we did, because she actually passed away during the pandemic. And so I'm just so grateful to her friendship, because the masculine in her was like, not another minute more. I'm going to essentially, what I call now in my work, husband you and take you to the church. And she's like, you need to be baptized in the spit of Tony Robbins, because she goes, you're so in your story, you have to go. And so anyway, so that's how I ended up. I was in this relationship, and it's interesting. I just mentioned I'm going to be in this magazine, and I was pulling pictures from this particular event, and my partner at the time was there. The relationship ended there. We were actually in Fiji at one of Tony's big events. It was a 4-hour intervention. I raised my hand when he asked, who's familiar with my work, and is it anything interesting? And I did. And so he hung with me, and it was fascinating, because that's the first time I heard of masculine feminine energetics. And he said, honey, there is like a strap on, you need to be castrated, because you are so strong, but I'm feeling you. And it's all from fear. And his stature, and just the fierceness of who he was, because he was really firm with me. I felt my father had just recently passed away. And actually, oh my gosh, ironically enough, today is the anniversary of my daddy's death. So, whoa, is that not like a cool God wink?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I know Daddy,
me
too. Daddy did the best he could, but he left when I was young, and childhood ended there. Was working since I was 12. So yeah, that's so neat how that works. Well, it makes it just
yes.
Yeah, right. And the fact that you and I can slow down, and experience that, and feel it, and we can experience each other experiencing each other in that moment. That is something, girl, if you would have seen me 12, 13 years ago, I would have been like, what the heck are they doing? Like, what's this feeling? Like, oh, emotions. I was really a pretty masculine woman for sure. And I was a deer in headlights, because I so wanted my life to not be anything like what it was growing up. So therefore I was controlling. Therefore I would be very critical of those around me, especially men, especially if I smelled that they might be a little weak. You better believe it. I was like, oh no, we're not going to do that. Even probably with my son to some degree, where I was a good mom, but I was not the most nurturing mom. It was, I really did have a problem with feeling, I wanted to toughen them up. And I know that had to do from what I experienced from my dad directly and indirectly. You rest in peace, daddy. I love you. You know what I mean? So again, I believe we can effectively blame our past, and we can see where the gifts are. And yet I don't want to spiritually bypass it, because I did that for so long with just mindset work, that it wasn't until I finally moved away from my years. Actually, because I went and worked with Tony, traveled with him for several years, and loved it. I'm so grateful, because he's such a gateway to so many other things. But I am such a fully immersion type of a woman, and I wanted to learn and feel it and taste it, because I finally felt seen, heard, and understood, which essentially, that and safety, seen, heard, understood, and safety is the crux of the pillars of a woman. And I apologize, I don't know what's dinging, but something's dinging, and I thought I
That's
had all.
confirmation from your father. It's like, I'm here.
Exactly. There you go. I got you. Yeah. Thank you. Oh, I love you. You're fantastic. Oh my gosh.
That's
That
just
was,
confirmation.
yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That was like a little wink, right?
Right.
Yeah. So it was just to be able to experience life that way. And I had to know. And so it wasn't until then that all the knowledge I had here was just seeping in my cells, seeping in my body. And so many people think that, embodiment is about movement and just dancing, but it's not. It really is, for me, it's for you and I to experience that and really feel it, and allowing, that's an embodiment of pure joy and curiosity right there, right?
Right.
Yeah, and it's just fascinating. And I'll back up for a second about the addictive personality based on the nature of your show. Is I remember one of my first spiritual teachers, when I moved from the mindset work into more of this art of embodiment, so to speak, is he said to me, Sandy, you have this story that you're emotionally unavailable. Sorry, that you only attract emotionally unavailable men, like you and I talked about before we hit record. And I'm like, yeah, absolutely. My picker's off. And he goes, let me just put you through a process. And he showed me very quickly that I was addicted to being disappointed. I was addicted to the stress hormones of essentially trauma, right? I was addicted to that part of me that kind of had a kink around being rejected and abandoned. And I know that sounds kind of strange, but that had me go down. It's like Candyland, you go, it shoots. All right, so now I'm going to go study trauma, and I'm going to study this. And that's why I love the work of the Sacred She method, because it really is like this cornucopia of all these different pieces on my healing journey that I've kind of shaken up and poured it out into, what it is. And I'm able to like parachute into a woman's life, and men too, because I work with men and couples, and I love working with teenage girls too.
Oh,
It's
that's
like,
awesome.
yeah, it's so good. God, if I would have known this back then, right? Um,
Right.
and I'm glad that I didn't, because I got to do that. But if I can help women and young girls collapse time, energy, money, heartbreak, to be able to, basically serve from where they are more authentically, then so be it. So yeah, I mean, it's a lot there, but he made me see the addiction to that, the addiction to love, the hormones, because trauma isn't just the incident. It doesn't have to be this big T trauma, like the moment you and I decided we no longer going to use our addiction, I have to say, I went from more of an exercise bulimia is where I was. I mean, they literally did a study. Like, if I told you, they did a study on exercise bulimia, and I was asked to be in it. So what did that do? Fed right back into the addiction, right? Right. I mean, so
Totally.
totally. It's like, oh my, I mean, I can remember. And then they put me on exercise restriction, because I was like, all that stuff. And it's like, so there I am again, significant. So anyway, so I really was able to see how is a symptom to actually something else going on in the brain, because our brain just wants to make us safe, not happy. And it is trying to go back to, makes me want to cry, homeostasis. Is trying to go back home, even if home was a just kind of a shit show kind of a thing, right? And so the more that I can educate people on, it's not just about, like for me, going to Christian counseling, 3 times a week and all the things I did back then. And then I didn't do it right. And then it's like, oh my gosh, and there's shame and blame. And there we go again.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that circle 8. And then my brain went, yep, there she is again. She messed it up again. Oh yeah. And my body's like, oh yeah, sister, you messed it up again. It's like smoking a cigarette for the first time. I imagine I've never really been smoking, but I'm imagining if I did. So anyway, I just think that it's so fun to be able to feel our feelings fully and being able to express them. Because if I have been able to do that back then, I'm imagining, I don't have God's eyeballs, but I've seen it enough in other women, and that to be able to be given permission to feel what they're feeling, even in those moments when they want to relapse and they want to call the ex, or they may want to, go back and use substances, that instead of like blaming themselves, what have you, but go back to the feeling, because the feeling they're addicted to. Yeah. It's not necessarily the whatever their choice is, that was freeing. That was freeing for me. And it made me again realize when I get in those darker moments, to have the awareness first and to slow myself down and go, okay, wait a minute. What is the familiar feeling I'm feeling? And it could be like this very dark, depressed state. I mean, my husband and I we're coming out of, that we call it the dark night of the soul of our relationship. And we teach that the last 5% of healing happens in partnership, because it's so easy to be single, right? And I went through this beautiful healing process, and I did a masculine cleanse, which I take my clients on if they need it. And it's not just about not dating again or not having sex. It's actually the masculine within ourselves, to heal the masculine from within, to learn to appreciate the masculine in others, how we can go be shoulder to shoulder as strong women, right? We don't have to lose our sovereignty, while we also have the superpower of being an oracle for the masculine in others. And that's why, women who get this right, and learn to harmonize the two, holy cow, we're unstoppable, because we take away the toxicity of the masculine competition, because that's what that is, the masculine competition, the comparing and the contrasting and all of that, where we have to get ahead. That really is more the masculine within that needs to be healed. Because when you know that you're a walking, talking big deal, and that there's so much love and abundance in that body that you don't have to compete with the woman right here, then that's how we change the world. Right? I mean, that's the power of this feminine reclamation that I love to talk about. It's not like, oh, we have to claim it again. Like, it's more of like, no, we accept that it's always been there.
100%. I love that, what you said. And there's just so many different angles I can go out of, like, oh, which one should I talk about next? What's this? What should I? But you know what? It's so true, because so my childhood, from the ages, so my dad died when I was a baby. He was murdered. But so my mom brought in a man, knowing that I would want a father figure, because I would draw pictures of a family. And she brought in this man, but he was kind. He never hit me, but he sexually abused me from the ages of 6 to 12 years old. And from there, I had a horrible first relationship with a guy. We were both the same age, about 15 years old. I lost my virginity to him. And he physically was like possessive and obsessed with me. And it was scary. I never experienced, he shook me, and he followed me, stalked me. And we were just freshmen or the sophomores in high school.
Wow.
And so I had to get a restraining, or I had to go to court and get a restraining order. This was at a young age. So of course, then in my senior year, then I met a guy much more kind, but always giving me stuff. And I just was like, oh, this is nice. But for some reason, whenever I didn't get my way, I would physically abuse him. I was the abuser.
Yep.
That was the abuser.
I get it. Yeah.
And so I had all this anger. And, we broke up. And then here it goes, partying, drinking, drugs, whatever. And then I met my DJ husband in 2000, was it 2003? Oh my gosh,
Right.
so it sounds so small.
Wow.
I'm like,
You look like you're 16. How is
oh
that even
really?
possible?
I'm gonna be
Wow.
42 next month. I'm like, oh, I had to think about that. It took me back, like, oh wow, 2003. Okay, that sounds very old, or a long time ago. Well, it was a long time ago, but anyway. And so we got married, but he's also an ex addict of crack, or yeah, I think crack. And I didn't know that until after we were married. His
Oh,
brother then told me.
wow.
So I had no idea. But then we would go party, do ecstasy, and drink alcohol and everything. And that was our marriage. It was like everything was an illusion. It was fantasy. It was just like all about partying and drugs and sex. And that was it. Well, I started being abusive again, and but worse because of my drinking. And so that we divorced, of course. And then here comes my not high school, my college fleeing around. Oh, hey, how are you? And like, okay, let's give this a try, you know. But I was very vulnerable at that state when he came
Sure.
into my life. I was drinking way more than I probably was because I was just stuck in bed. So he would come over, whatever. So that happened. And then after I went to, I think, my first rehab, yes, he was there to try to support me, whatever. It didn't work because he kind of was an enabler, because I said, oh, let's go drink. He was like, okay, because that's the first thing we did when I left the rehab, the 30-day
Yes.
rehab. We went to the casino and we drank and did whatever.
Wow.
Well, then I wound up getting pregnant. I wasn't thinking I needed to get with this guy. And I'm like, okay, well, let's try to move in together. So we moved in together after the baby was born, 3 months, I think, after the baby was born. And then I stopped drinking, of course, because of the pregnancy and
Sure.
nursing. However, baby got off my breast and went to the bottle, and I went to my bottle immediately afterward too.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing. And then the abuse got worse and worse, and my body was getting physical. It was just horrible. So every relationship that I had is just gone downhill. And it wasn't until I surrendered, first and foremost. I had to surrender to God first. I was like, Lord, I cannot do this. You know, I
Yeah.
wasn't really spiritual religious, but I know there's a Jesus. I didn't really follow Jesus, of course, because of course, whatever I was doing, but I knew there was a Jesus. And so I was like, you know what? Whoever is God, please help me. And that's when I had to go to the hospital 2 weeks later, or maybe 2 weeks later, for pancreatitis. And that was severe, and almost, the doctor said, you know, you're going to die in 10 years if you don't stop drinking the way you're drinking. I was drinking a fifth of vodka a day in order for me to function, though. This isn't in order for me to drive.
Wow. Yeah. I get it.
It
Yeah.
sounds so scary, but it's so true. And so what happened is, I said, no, I have two boys. Forget this. No, so I was detoxing in the hospital, but what better opportunity for me to go ahead
Yeah.
and become sober and start brand new. And that's what I did. Moved out, got my little studio,
Wow.
started brand new, started going to church, met a bunch of people, Bible study, like Bible
Yeah. Yeah.
study, and
Yeah.
and then women's Bible study, and then got a mindset mentor who's a trainer and also a yogi expert. And so because of her teacher taught her about all of the feminine and masculine energies and relationships and how they are balanced and this, that, I was fed that information, but I didn't put it into practice, obviously, because I wasn't in any relationship. But I was
Yeah.
studying, and studying. I was study her teacher. Study. What do men do? Okay, study. What do men like? Okay, study. I was just
Yeah.
studying. So now I'm like, okay, Gina, I don't plan on having a relationship at least for 10 years, right? So in the prayer request box at church, I would say, one day I would love to have a family unit. One day I would love to have a family unit. I'm thinking 10 years, okay? Put in the box. every Sunday, put in the box, not expecting anything. All this sudden, you know, because I was doing children's ministry, there was this cute little
Yeah.
boy that reminded me of my little boy. They're only 2 years apart.
Beautiful.
Love him so much. And then I was doing street ministry when we go out and feed the homeless and to share the gospel and just
Yeah.
give them
Yes. Yes.
conversation, to be honest. Just give them conversation, just to have someone to talk to, so they can just share their feelings or whatever they want. And then I noticed that that little kid's father was in there, not my group, but was part of that. And so he saw me, and then, but I was talking to one of our other friends, I guess who's our other friend. And then I said, oh, I know your son, Isaac. He's so cute. I was raving about it. And then he's like, oh, you know? And so after that, a week later, he added me on Facebook. And I'm like, oh, here we go again, Gina. Nope. Don't do it. you're not ready. You're not ready.
Yeah.
But the Lord had other plans for me. He thought he thinks I was ready, because after a week later, then he and I started talking, and then we went out to dinner. We were just like, I shared him my full testimony, though. I said, I'm putting everything out on the table. I am not keeping any secrets. This is how I was. This is who I am now. And this is who I want to be in the future. This is going to be me. But he was so fascinated by it because his father kind of going through the same thing in India, and got saved and everything. And so he really was kind of resonating with my story. And so we just fell in love and really just got married. And then taking all of the knowledge I've learned about the whole learning the feminine energy and harmonizing them with the masculine energy, now everything feels so like we're unified, like it's supposed to, like how it was supposed to be. So I wanted to share my story with you. That's where I come
and I
from.
appreciate it, but I there's a couple of things there, so I want to make sure that I get this right.
Totally.
I want to interrupt you, and I want to say, first off, you did something that so many women do, is you were sharing your story so beautifully. And by the way, I can't even imagine having a stalker at 15, because one of my old employees, I had the same thing, but I was, this was 7 years ago, and we still have the restraining order and all that. I mean, it is frightening to have someone just completely violate. Well, you already know that from what happened with your stepfather, but I mean, that violation of just no. So again, it's another way someone's violating our boundaries, right? So first, I want to say I am just proud of you for your reverence and your tenacity and everything that you've gone through. And there was something that you said that I almost diluted your power, because you said, well, then, I had my baby, and then something, I'm paraphrasing, and then I decided, well, of course I'm not going to drink, or what, it was something like that. And it's like, and you just kept talking, and I wanted to go like, no. If you were in my group, I would have gone like, no, stop for a second. And I have like this director take two, and I would have you go like, wait a minute, may I honor you? And so may I honor you and do a brag for you?
Absolutely.
Yes.
I love that. Thank you.
The only thing you need to do is, because it's typical for us as women that we forget that our surrender and that our sacrifice, honestly, that it's just sort of a given. And so I'm not going to tell you what I'm going to say. It's just after I say a few things, I'll just do a few. All you have to say is, I receive that. And like, just really, really like feel my admiration, my love for you, and my love for you as a woman and as fellow sister. So would you do that with me?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Awesome. So Gina, I wanted to brag with you and brag on you whenever I heard you sharing your story. And there was a moment when you talked about after you had your son and you were in the hospital, and you shared, that you decided then and there you were going to like stop drinking. And you kind of like talked about it really quickly, and I wanted to come back to it and just say, I really brag that you're a woman of excellent character, and that you decided, with Will, that you would surrender, and you put his life before yours. And I just wanted to say that I honor you for that.
Thank you. And I received that.
Yeah. I also wanted to brag also how you use your test as your testimony, and your message, and you allow God to just weave God's web as God does into your story. And I know now why, as I know now why I met you. I love to do the same thing. I just want to say thank you for being so raw and organic in your vulnerability, because the world needs more women, like you and like me, to share that it's like messy and it's freaking beautiful.
Yes, totally. Thank you so much. And I do receive everything that you give me. And I feel your energy, girlfriend. When we first initially were messaging each other, I already knew. I was like, I already love this lady. Just like, I already knew. And so, yes, thank you so much for that. It's nice to hear other women uplift other women, because that's what I love doing. And that's what I love because I'm an entrepreneur now. I would never have thought I would have a podcast speaking to someone like you, who is an amazing person, and just meeting so many women who are just incredible. I'm just like, I get blown away by hearing these stories, and I'm just like, oh, I love them for that. And they're just, I'm seeing it more and more. And I'm so grateful that I'm actually seeing these women just be more vulnerable, being more authentic, and just truly sharing whatever the message they want to share, and not and with no apology.
Well, it is unapologetically, and again, I mean, it's all frequency, right? I mean,
Right. Oh, right.
energetically, we are always transmitting something, and the reason why you and I, had a propensity to, attract men who were ultimately going to hurt us, and then therefore we would end up hurting them. Trust me, I've definitely had my share of hurting a man too. In the name of love. I get it, and it's just so interesting too, because we like attracts like, and it is and I also love women that are street smart and scrappy like we are, because I would rather have a woman who has gone through the experience that I'm just going to include me and the bunch, okay, like we are like soul sisters, that we've been out there in the trenches, than a woman who is, and God bless her, that basically went from her daddy's home to her husband's home, and hasn't really had those life experiences. And again, I'm not judging her for that. It's just that I find that when women come to me that have had those experiences, there's a part of them, especially after they go through menopause, I find that they're like, because by the way, we go through our own midlife crisis too. I call it the tunnel. The tunnel is what we call it in my work. And we want to burn it down. Like, let's burn it down. And I'm like, do we really have to burn it down, to come back? Do we really have to, be in the hospital and have the thing? Did I really have to have yet another failed relationship for me to finally hear God going, hey, you're worthy of more? But apparently I did. And God, there's so many neat synchronicities, girl, in this conversation, because as I was like, editing this article, and they asked me, like, you talk about your faith so candidly in a world of a lot of people that are, I mean, I meditate and all the things, and I grew up Southern Baptist, and I was in India one time with Tony, and I can remember, one of the monks going to like lay hands on me. And I can remember, I mean, I just started working with Tony, and I was just like, I'm here for it all. But I can remember walking up because they were like laying hands, and I was like, God, I'm just here, and I'm just like, put a hedge of protection around me, and I'm like, I don't know what's gonna happen, but I love you, God, because I didn't know, but this is back a long time ago. It was like over 10 years ago, and I was still kind of stuck in the rhetoric of the legalism and all. And I gotta say, I learned so much about the art of loving and that country, and then also through the work and the diversification. I mean, I and meditating, and I removed myself from all the things things, people, places that did not embody love. Like they're like their hands and feet. Like, are we the hands and feet? And it started me with, is this better for the world? What's better for Sandy's better for the world, as long as I know who I'm being, grounded in God's word. And, when I was learning to, and I say learning to be loved, when I was learning to be loved again, after I did my masculine cleanse and all of that, and I mentioned the 5% gets healed in partnership, as that last 5% is easy to be a monk sitting all by yourself, or to be single out there in the world. Believe it or not, ladies, it actually is easier to be single, even though you might be thinking that it's not, to be in partnership, where it is designed to trigger us, to actually bring out the whack-a-moles, and for us to, in reverence to God, and our higher self, is that we learn to love them the way God would love them. And again, I'm not endorsing abuse or any of that, nor do I know you are. And sometimes it can feel that way, because especially if your nervous system is so used to being mistreated, being in a relationship like that may not feel normal again. So as John and I have been going through our dark night of the soul, I mean, it has been like, whoa. I mean, like where I thought, did I make a mistake again? What's going on? Because because of the safety of my relationship with John, my husband, I finally was able to start feeling some feelings from childhood, where I had a memory come up earlier last year around, something happened with a babysitter. And my mom doesn't want to talk about it, but I'm like, wait a minute. But the safety of being in this relationship with John that I'd never had before allowed this to like come over here. And I went into some deeper trauma work, which I now like really bring into my work as well. I mean, my work is a lot of fun, and we bring in the awarenesses, right? Because I don't think healing and transformation needs to be so arduous. And you've gotten to know me here. I think fun is good, and bringing in those 10 versions of us. But yeah, and the partnership piece, I think it's just learning how to love another while we actually hold the boundaries within ourselves and honor like the feminine in our partner as well. Because I think the more we can hold space for them now, without them bleeding all over us, because let's face it, I mean, a masculine man that we're constantly seeing bawling and squalling is not going to be a turn on, number one, nor is it going to feel safe.
Mm-hmm.
All
Mm-hmm.
you have to do, I'll give everybody a tip, is I mean, this even happened with our pastor. I live in Tampa Bay, so the Buccaneers and Tom Brady was with us, and our pastor like loves Tom Brady. And I remember watching him like on Church Online, and he was just, and he's amazing, like just such a real dude. But his like posture, was like just all laid back like this, and my body's like, mm-mm, mm-mm. And nothing to do with what he had on. I mean, we're in Florida, super cash, but it was because our brain it's a primal brain. This brain here, we are always scanning to see if we're safe, especially women, a more feminine being, right? And are we safe? Are we safe? And a man is all slouched like this. We're like, is he aware? Somebody came right now is going to be able to cut them. You know what I mean? So
Totally.
yeah, and I know you know that because you were in charge for so long, and so yeah, I mean those kind of simple things like that, when I can just share with women, and even if it's just 5% deeper in their understanding of themselves, feeling into their body. I recently just launched a course called SakredRespect, which we'll talk about a little bit here. It's basically a relationship reset, because you learn how the art of respecting men through these different practices, and because it's a lot of fun. I studied Dr. Emerson, who wrote the book Love and Respect, and I was able to take a lot of that teaching and then bring it into my speak. So I'll actually share a link with you about SakredRespect, and maybe we'll put that in the show notes too.
Oh yeah, totally.
Because we kept the price point really low, because I want to impact 12 million lives with this. Because remember, I have a son too, and I realized that my emasculation of my son was very not intentional, but anytime that we're micromanaging, and I use this example all the time with the moms I work with, and they're like, oh yeah, I do that. We're decorating the Christmas tree. My mom would do this all the time. And we're basically like this big, the tree's that big, and we're putting all the ornaments on like right here at this level. And then how many of us have actually taken and moved the ornaments up? So you take a little boy's spirit, and he wants to help, right? And then we're moving everything around, and because we want it to look good or what have you, so innocent, but we've crushed our spirit. Or anytime that our little one wants to help us with the groceries, but we're like, no, that's too heavy for you, or it pours on cereal. That is a way, in some ways, we're emasculating him. And let's face it, there is an epidemic out there of men. I mean, I hear it all the time from my single ladies, or even women that are married and longtime partnerships. Because I have women like married 20, 30 years who come and work with me too. And they're like, where's masculinity? Where is it? Either they've gone through the tunnel and they've lost the testosterone, or we have a whole epidemic of men who don't know how to be men because it has been frowned upon. And I'll share this too. Understand I'm super hyper vigilant to the work, so I'm always looking for it. I don't know if you remember Mean Girls from years ago.
Yes. I remember that. Yeah.
Well, it was again that same India trip when I was with Tony, and I remember being on the treadmill, in the morning before we got started with the tour, and they had Mean Girls 2, which I didn't even know they had that
I didn't even
on.
know they had that either.
Yeah, it wasn't a big hit, but let me tell you about this. So this is like the nature. This is like the nature of the beast, the time of the time. So there's the character there is, I don't even know who it was. I don't even know who it was, but she was a tomboy. She was a lead character. It wasn't Lindsay Lohan, but it was like that Lindsay. She was a tomboy, and she wore and her dad was a mechanic, and she like walked that saunter, that saunter, and her boyfriend, God bless him, he's trying to open up the door for her for a date. She's like, oh no, I don't need that, kind of a thing. And that has essentially been this like women's movement that has basically crushed the spirit of men, where socially men don't know, especially here in the States, right? They don't know what to do. Is it okay? And then look at what we've done to boys. So this Sacred Respect, I'll send you a link for the show note, and we'll do a 10% off code too for everyone as well.
That's so awesome.
So it's like bite-sized pieces. So every day you can step in, and it's beautiful, because we are able to actually also heal your relationship with your own feminine and your masculine at the same time. We kept the price point, like I said, low, because I wanted to put this in the hands of women all around the world. And then also we have like a kids version too that you can tack on, where it's actually about your boys, but you can apply a lot of this there too. It's just and that was my story. I've been writing this for years, and it wasn't until my husband and I got to the other side of what we had gone through, where I went and healed that part of me that would smell blood in the water, kind of a thing. And then also encouraged him to go do his healing work. And so we had this moment this morning after our devotional time, and like both in tears about how far we've come and how many couples we love to serve in this work, because so many people, especially if you get married later in life, because they don't realize that a lot of the responses are trauma responses, just like back up when Tony's like, honey, this is just your success is beautiful, but the hustle is from trauma, because you're scared to death your house is going to foreclose like it did when you were a kid. You're scared to death that you're not going to have food. Even though you have plenty of resources and you know that God is good. My primal brain, until I rewired it, was like, oh no, what's happening? And it's not super sexy. I mean, I love polarity work, and I love the sensuality and teaching women how to get in their body. And I also know it's irresponsible of some of these polarity teachers out there that aren't teaching us how to actually honor the body when it comes to their and their also knowing that is maybe even their no a trauma response. Can we teach them to lean in a little bit more once they understand, what that is within the body? Because there's a texture to it. Mm-hmm. And my texture of no and yes is going to be very different than yours because of our DNA. Mm-hmm. So again, not super sexy, and it's so necessary. I think that's one reason why the divorce rate's so high, is because we don't talk about the not so sexy part of partnership, especially when you get older and you have a lot of experiences under your belt, like you and I talked about here. Mm-hmm. So I think the more that we can actually make, I won't even call them mistakes, but honestly calling our own foul, that people will be like, okay, you know what? If she can do it, I can do it. Because when we're walking around, I think the meanest I've ever had women be to me was women from Bible study, quite frankly. Some of my experiences. I've never been.
Oh, trust me. That's why sometimes I don't like to go to church. Sometimes I just
I know. And we need to be this, because my mantra is I'm a beacon of light for God, and I share God's love in a fun and funky way. So you and I need to be like the Thelma and Louise who don't drive off the cliff. We walk into church like we own it, like, hey, thank you, God, we are here to serve,
Oh, I'm always in the front row too, just like, yes, come on, kids.
Exactly. Exactly. I like barefoot, all the things, right? It is so, and what a gift to finally feel so comfortable in our own skin and trusting ourselves. And that's the thing I talk about, like the rectangle of our Zoom here, that structure is the masculine. What I'm doing in here in my energy bubble, my energy rectangle, and you're doing in yours, that's the feminine energy. That's the art. It's like the riverbed, is the masculine, and the river, is the feminine. And if we can actually learn that even structure is our boundaries, is our yeses and our nos, and then also the feminine intuition, because we've numbed it, we've sedated that beautiful, feminine center, which is, essentially our womb space, whether you have a womb or not, our heart, and then this beautiful, gorgeous intuition we have here. And then it just blocks our voice. So there's so many practices, I share. They're practical, like, skipping practice when it's a hard time with joy, and, reclaiming her voice, literally, whether she can sing or not. And all these things that I share, I've experienced in my own journey, because I want to be authentic and congruent. And I was a tough cookie. I needed to try it all before I could get here.
Yes. Oh, thank you so much for sharing all that. And yes, and I appreciate, I'm so grateful that you have a listener's gift for our audience.
Yes.
That's amazing, because I really think that everyone needs to hop on your programs.
Oh,
Please. I'm
it's so
actually, I
yeah.
please, people, listen to her. Sandy is what she's talking about, because this is what I've experienced too. And just bringing that energy, that's why my marriage, I mean, of course, like, we have our troubles,
Sure.
but I respond differently now. I don't respond all angrily and aggressive. I say, you know what? I just need some time. Just give me a moment, please. I just do some deep breathing, and I'll do whatever I need to do.
But girl, even if not, I mean, there's something like I actually will give a woman a temper tantrum practice, because there's a little we always talk about the inner child, but there is and I have a feeling when I found out the inner teenager, I was like, oh yeah, she's pissed. She lost her childhood, give it back. So I have one of my signature courses is the sisterhood, which is when we come together all around the globe, but we do it obviously virtually, and I do live events, and I have mentorships and such. But there's nothing better than women witnessing women. And because something literally within the brain, when we actually witness another woman or another person, and I'll back up real quick just to make sure I clarify what I was saying. I teach women also. There's a reel I have on Instagram, and it's about how do you hold space for your masculine partner. And it literally is a timed practice where he feels our Zoom redwood. He feels the masculine in us, and he's allowed the freedom for us not to judge him. And maybe it's 3 minutes where he gets to emote, stomp, whatever it is. And now, granted, if that was happening all the time, no, and I learned too with my ex-husband, I thought that he was so masculine because he has such a hot temper. And then I found out that temper tantrums are actually quite feminine, right? And so when men are like, who've been hollering at games and stuff like that, or we're throwing our cards because we lost our hand, that's very feminine, because a masculine being, like you're holding space for me right now, right? And if you and I met for lunch, you probably would be moving your body around, talking more, but you're holding space for me so I can feel safe to explore. That's the beauty of feminine leadership, especially to weave it in. And we need more men to get in touch with their feminine so we can have more heartfelt leadership. And by the way, ladies, a lot of that has to do with us not judging them for when they do show us their heart. So there's so much there to unpack. But yeah, I love women, and I can honestly say I don't think I always did.
Me too.
Yeah.
I never loved them as much as I love them now. Tell you that
I know. I mean, I love their heart, their heart, and to be able to witness them, like, yeah, I can take up space, and that's okay. So I have fun getting to know women and give them special practices. I was just at a meditation retreat, and I have actually a statue of Jesus meditating on my desk. And I remember one of my friends was like, is that like sacrilegious? Is that okay? I'm like, Jesus meditated? Are you kidding? So of course I loved it even more. Bought one for outside.
My goodness. Yes, he meditated for sure.
Yes, we meditate on the Lord. Meditate going into this call with you. But I was at this meditation retreat and met a woman who we had a brief encounter over dinner. We just met, and I was talking to her about the way she said something, talking about her and her husband, married 25 years, and she was there was just some disconnect, and I'm like, basically talking about her walk. And there's so much trauma, and our story gets stuck in our hips, especially the more that we sit. And so I was showing her how there's a way that we can walk where it allows our body to move, where our hips are moving. And it just starts unlocking and unlocking and unlocking. And we've been messaging back and forth on Boxer, and she's like, oh my gosh, this is actually like working. And all I'm doing is and it feels awkward because our body, we're so used to now being very angular. And, if I'm going to go and get the can of beans at the grocery store, I'm going to walk right towards it versus making it a little delicious why we're going. So there's so much juice in that. I mean, I could talk about this forever, as you can tell, because it's so necessary in our wild world that we live in, where we want, in a world of chaos, where we do need structure, and we do need boundaries, and we do need, organization. And it's also our feminine spirit that will add the art and the light and the surrender in a way that's just so beautiful.
Yes, I love that. Yeah, so the embodiment, and it's so true. So I'm doing these practices with my spine. Yes, from the sacral to the crown. The Kundalini practices, even like trying the movements. My back just craps or craps. My back just crapped. It felt crappy before because we went to an amusement park with the kids yesterday, and so I went on these little roller coasters. So I needed that adjustment. But yes, that movement in the hips, and to be honest, when I was doing those movements, intercourse was actually more pleasurable.
100%.
I was like, oh wow, it was easier to actually have to climax. And normally when it's a little bit longer and harder for women, it was very much faster. I was like, oh, this is new. What have I been doing differently? Those movements in the hips. Yes.
But you know why too? It's the movement, but it's the when you attach an emotion to a moment, like you are right now, you're like, oh, I have more orgasm when I'm moving my hips. There's muscle memory there. The issues are in the tissues, right? And so what happens is that you're literally in training your body to call in more receptivity. You're calling in more pleasure, and that's why with the women I work with, it's always like to move 10 minutes a day, and random songs. I have like a playlist that hit shuffle and just go. But anytime I'm pointing over here in my office door, like I have a practice that anytime I go through a door frame, I do like a little check, and I feel it. Do I feel crunchy or rigid? And just whether it's or or just whatever it is, something that actually just will get me back in my body. Because most of the time during the workday, we're not. So even if you have to set your alarm, you know what I mean? So there's so much. I know you and I could talk forever about
I know. We always
appreciate you
so much. I have to come back. We'll have to do another show, a continuation show for sure.
Love it.
Because I can go on forever. But yes, where can our listeners follow you and find you?
Yeah, I love it. Thank you. So Sandy Sembler on Instagram is always a great place. And I know we're going to put a couple links here with some gifts. A great way to get started in the journey is sandysembler.com/quiz. And that takes you right to one of my quizzes. And I do have a masterclass coming up. I don't know when this is going to be broadcast, but
within a week.
Oh, good. It's sandysembler.com/masterclass. And you'll have all that because it's actually around feminine reclamation. A lot of what we're talking about here, and that more surrendered but empowered place of sovereignty. And that's a free masterclass just for have people come on, and it'll be a lot of fun. So lots of different places, but sandysembler.com and Instagram are probably the best places. I got some fun reels for teaching, and so I cannot wait to talk to you again. You are magnificent.
Oh, you are too. Oh my goodness. So we'll have a continuation for sure. Thank you so much for being on my show, and God bless you.
See you later. Bye-bye.
Bye.